Here I go on this job I really didn't want to do, which is pulling this lid on the back end of a 1586 International. I've replaced all kinds of the hydraulic pumping components, and I still have a very low pressure and it's leaking in the rear. It's inside the rear. It's leaking from one of the action control valves underneath this cover, and I have to pull it to find it. So I had to pull the tank out. The easiest way to do that, the tank sits on a steel platform. It's got 2 bolts here and 2 bolts there. It's just 2 feet. That's all. You don't have to pull the strap. Leave the plastic body strapped onto the steel floor. Just pull those 4 bolts, and then right here you've got one little hose there. You pop off, unscrew the cap, and you're gonna have 2 wires. Pull them up, and this right here is a fuel return line that'll be sitting up here. When you actually, I might as well show you. So you got to drain the top tank, and the way to do it is probably way smarter to use a siphon pump or some kind of pump, but worst comes to worst, the bottom tank does have a little drain valve right there, very small, but you can drain it out of there. Take you forever. The good news is that will take water out, so I highly suggest draining from there periodically, at least a little bit, to keep your fuel supply cleaner. And then you got to climb underneath and crawl on your back and work your way up to get the hose clamp undone and pull this boot off. Now if you have to move the machine, you can still move it with that top tank gone, but it's going to blow fuel out of this return hose. So just route it back into the top of the tank, wedge that in there with a rag, keep it clean, and that's how you get your tank off. I can probably leave these arms on. I don't know if it'll balance well or not, but this rocker, bell crank rocker for the PTO engage, looks like it's gonna have to come off. I'm gonna be pulling these control rods right here for the draft. I'm gonna pull them at the back if I can. 2 hoses. You do have to take, if you've got your trailer plug, 2 bolts to drop that out, and then this one's grounded right here, and then just a clip, so I'm going to kick that off to the side. And I believe that I'm going to pull these 2 rear cab mount bolts and raise the cab up a few inches to make it easier to access the front bolts, because unfortunately this cover goes pretty far under. It's really right underneath the seat, and I don't think you can access it through the cab. It looks like it's going to be a chore. I got the back row bolts out. The front row is just miserable, way up in the front. I mean, all the way under the cab. I don't see any way to, there's no access from under the seat. I had to take off the nuts for the cab mount. There's, as far as I can tell, there's 4 cab mounts. The front 2 are just right here, kind of by your feet, right at the door jamb. So I've got those loosened up to allow this to flex a little bit more off the front 2 mounts. And I've been just using a lever. I just use a regular old lever with a cheater pipe on it, tucked in my armpit, so I could crank down and then just use 2 chainsaw wedges on each side and slide them together to incrementally support and keep getting another bite and raise this thing going one side, you know, alternating sides, and using these like how a house mover, you know, jacks up a house. And I got it high enough that I could knock in a 2x4 on each side. So we're right at the top of the threads, and it's getting heavy. The thing doesn't want to bend up any more than it's at. I don't know if I got any linkages that are binding up or anything. I don't think so. I still got to pull this rod right here. And by the way, this is your brake bleeder line. You got one there. And on this side, it's a little bit of a different layout because there's so much piping. It's pretty busy, but you can see that little nipple down underneath the steel pipe. It's a pain to get at, but you can do it from the back with a long extension down through here to bleed your brakes, which I did on this machine already. Not too sure how much stuff's going to be attached when I try to lift this off, but I'm not going to stress about it until I get that front row of bolts, which looking like I'm going to need a ratchet wrench. I can probably get a ratchet in there with a cheater pipe if I make a dog-legged bent one to get them broke loose, but there's definitely no way you're getting any kind of impact gun in there. So we'll see what happens. Here's how I've got it rigged. It's all loose. I got a loop around there and a loop around there. This ratchet strap to the bracket in the front. And I've just got it to budge. So I am really nervous about any kind of action underneath. Yeah, I can't have it come back no further. I gotta go straight up with it. I probably gotta drive the fork truck forward a little. Let me do that. Well, this is really disappointing. I power washed this machine for an hour, at least an hour. Could not get up into any of that crap on top. Look how much of it just fell in. So I gotta get a vacuum cleaner and suck that out immediately before it wrecks this oil. There's your PTO drive, your PTO pump. I don't know what all this stuff does yet, but I'm gonna be figuring it out. Someone's been in here based on the Permatex. Never changed, you know, they didn't change the gasket, they just gooped it up. $75 gasket and a lot to scrape. Looks like there's an O-ring, pressure O-ring up there, should maybe get changed. Yeah, there's all this crap up here I could not get. The cab comes to right here. So you're just jetting around. You can get into this part, but you can't get back here. There's your lift cylinder to work your rock shaft right there. I guess this is linkage control stuff. I'll have to figure all that out. Well, I did get this off, got it up in the air with the forklift. Well, I put a chain loop around each lift arm side, and then I run a ratchet strap to a hook at the front. There's a little bracket at the front. So it wasn't wanting to lift up. Obviously it was nose heavy until I did that, and that worked really well. There's a big dowel here and a big dowel there, and I wasn't getting hung up on anything in here like I was concerned about. It was just it hadn't come off the dowel evenly. I think I found the problem with this. You probably can't see it, but up in front of my finger there's a bolt that's backed all the way out till it's hitting the housing on this valve on the side. And I won't be surprised if this bolt is loose. I'm guessing that whoever put this valve on last forgot to torque it, but that looks like a blown out plastic O-ring backer right there. Looks like a seal to me. So for my own records, I guess the lighting's not perfect for this. I'm trying to just kind of get a feel for how these linkages go. It looks like that bolt's in a sliding slot. That link is E-clipped from there to there. This rocker connects to this. Two big springs I got to deal with. The longer and the short fat, and the long skinny right here. Hopefully it's not too bad. I don't really know what it all does. There seems to be a spring-loaded linkage arm up there on some kind of rocker. Now the valve that was on the top did not have to come off. I pulled it off. It's the one where the relief housing is. And underneath there's a rectangular cover with 4 bolts, and underneath it there's 2 linkage arms with E-clips. I pulled that off. It did not need to come off, but I'm happy that I did, because there was a risk that the chain on this side could injure that valve block. So having it off took away that risk. You know, it's clear with the chain this way. So I got to figure out how to rig this thing up. Also, very, very easy to bend your dipstick tube, which I didn't even realize that it unthreads. So in the future, I'll definitely have that removed when I'm reinstalling this thing. That's all I can think of right now. Something I want to point out before I forget. There's a little rocker right here. Looks like it's got a pin that rides a cam on the rock shaft, rides a cam lobe for some kind of signaling. And it goes, so there's a pin right here. This one's on that side of it, and this long link is on the front end side of it. So this was toward the rear hitch, this one's toward the front. I guess that's the only thing that I think I missed. there's a pin right there that eventually engages this lever, and that pin is below the foot of this lever right here. Well, I had all kind of rubbish fall in there from way up in the front. I could not reach with the power washer. Couldn't even really see it until the cover was out, but I just vacuumed some of it. I got to put a piece of cardboard over here so I can clean that better. Vacuumed the junk that fell in, and I got lucky because I just saw this bolt right here on this rocker, some kind of shift rocker. That bolt was backed out about 1 inch, so that couldn't do anything good for you. I'll snug that up in a bit. It looks like this right here is a lube passage. There's a hole way up at the front. It does not take an O-ring. It looks like it's a lube passage, but this one definitely takes I would say a pretty critical O-ring, so I'll be ordering that part to change it out. I want to say this is a tube for lubricating that bearing. That's my guess. And then the lube passage, the way that it's ported into the cover, it looks like it comes and pumps oil up and slings it onto the top of the ring gear. I haven't read that in the book or anything. That's just me looking at it and thinking it out. There's also a passage right here, but it seems to just be a drain back hole or maybe a dowel hole. It's not used in the cover that I have, so I don't know what that might have been an option for. I guess I'll pretty soon have to get this thing figured out.